Hello, everyone. This is Renu Golwalkar, and I'm the Senior Director for Gender Equality and Social Inclusion with EngenderHealth. And today we have a wonderful, exciting panel to talk about incorporating DEI into our values, policies, and practices. Global Health 50/50 has collected and shared data on gender equality policies and practices of global health organizations for 5 years. EngenderHealth, Population Services International, and Pathfinder are international organizations working in SRHR and were all labeled as very high-performing organizations by Global Health 50/50 in their 2022 report. Each of our organizations considers our work on diversity, equity, and inclusion an ongoing journey, and we are here now to share our experience with all of you. First, I want to introduce Kent Buse, a co-founder and co-director of Global Health 50/50. Kent, what prompted you to launch Global Health 50/50?
Thanks, Renu. Listen, over many years, Sarah Hawkes, who is my partner, for full disclosure, and the co-director of Global Health 50/50, over many years, we came to understand that patriarchal norms and structures, they shape institutions, they drive poor health outcomes for everyone, they determine career pathways, and they narrow workplace norms. Sarah and I had written about the problems of gender blindness in global health for many years, but found that our concerns didn't incite any obvious change or action. So we decided to do things a little differently. We adopted a different strategy. First, in establishing GH 50/50, we initiated a more systematic approach to assessing the gender-related policies and practices of a large cross-section of global health organizations, 200. And we created the first ever interactive gender and global health index that I think you referred to, Renu. Secondly, we enrolled an A-list group of experts to serve on an advisory council who would amplify our findings, people like Helen Clark and Katja Everson. Third, we used eye-catching charts and infographics in an annual report to ensure our findings had an audience and hopefully had some impact too. And finally, we undertook to engage with organizations whose policies and practices we want to see change. Organizations such as those that are on this panel, the high-performing organizations, but also the low-performing organizations, and work with them to improve their practice. In our most recent report, Renu, we named and shamed organizations that had not made any meaningful practice. One of them threatened to sue us, and we saw that as progress in and of itself. In short, we established a transparency and accountability tool to drive systematic change or systemic change across the sector. Renu, that's what we've done. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Kent. And it's so inspiring to see this gender index, which has become like a guiding light in our sector. And so many organizations are drawing inspiration from that. Next, I want to go to Marina Dalton-Brown. Marina is a manager in PSI's Strategy and Insights Department. Marina, how do you track progress towards greater diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging within PSI? Is this difficult to measure concretely?
Thank you, Renu, and greetings to all. Thank you for facilitating this critical conversation. So for those of you who may not know PSI, we are very keen on measurement when it comes to our programmatic implementations and initiatives. So our journey around diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging is no different. We are very keen about measuring that as well. So I will share 3 short ways, among many others, 3 ways in which we do so. So one is that we gather organization-wide data through surveys that really speak to areas around employee engagement, our retention, career mobility, and specifically diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we take that data and we have established an organizational health dashboard So essentially, it's a way that we are looking at how our people are doing. This is critical for us. Another way is that we share these results very transparently and openly within the organization every quarter at our quarterly performance meetings, where we engage and we solicit feedback from our staff to find out how are we really doing. But we want to be able to share this so that the people factor of how we're progressing is given as much gravitas and as much prominence as our financial progress and our programmatic progress. A third way is that we are becoming more overt in sharing these externally. We have a long way to go, but one example is through our blog posts from our president, Carl Hoffman. I encourage you to check him on LinkedIn. So we're actually sharing insights around these metrics. So one example is that we're seeing the data is telling us that we're on track to our 2025 goal around diversity, but we need to do more around employee engagement, for example. We need to do more around the inclusion piece and belonging. So overall, our metrics are not perfect. We know it's not perfect, but we are on a journey. We want to increase and nurture safe spaces for honest conversation, and we want feedback so that we can all do better. Over to you again, Renu.
Thank you so much, Marina. And I love the way all your policies are putting people at the center of it, and then those honest conversations. And that reminds me, like even in EngenderHealth, for example, we have this internal staff transformation conversations where we have this journey where our teams reflect upon our own personal biases, prejudices, and stereotypes, and then getting on that journey for transformation. All right, let me go to our next panelist, Crystal Lander. Crystal is the Chief Strategic Engagement Officer with Pathfinder International. Crystal, Pathfinder has implemented policies related to hiring, personnel, budgeting, and more. How does applying a gender and DEI lens to your policies advance your goals for equity?
Thanks, Renu. And picking up with what Marina said, it's a lot of focusing in on your staff. So we looked at our policies and procedures, what was keeping us from getting the kind of diversity and gender balance that we were looking for. And we really took a look at our hiring practices, not only in the United States, but at all of our country offices. What was our leadership track? Why weren't women maybe stepping up to leadership? Were they missing something? Were they not just being encouraged? Many times you can see that someone may mentor someone who looks like them. So that means that you may not have a lot of diversity in the pipeline. So it was really important for us to make sure that when we're talking about an equitable place to work, that we're looking at what happens on the inside and how we're bringing people in, but also making sure the staff are feeling like these policies are really working for them and that we are speaking up and listening to staff. I think it's just a big part of what Marina was saying is you really have to look at retaining staff and listening to staff. And then they have some of the best ideas on how to improve. We also did look at our board practices too, because that was important. Again, looking at the pipeline, going to an outside recruiting firm to help us do that for board practices. It really is not one of the best things I can say. It's not one thing. You have to do multiple things, and it's not a check-off box. It takes a lot of hard work.
Thank you, Crystal. And I think that's so inspiring, the way you have analyzed the recruitments and the women's leadership and promoting that internally as an organization. That's really commendable. Next, I'll go to my next panelist, Mohamed Ly, Regional Director for Western Central Africa with EngenderHealth. Mohamed, you've expressed that in a number of countries in the WCA region, we see more men in leadership positions than women. Is this a concern, and what are you doing to address it?
Thank you, Renu. Thank you for allowing me to talk about this very important issue. So you're right, in our region in Western Central Africa, the question of women leaderships arises in all countries. And the imbalance is also observed at the level of the main decision-making positions at the state level and even in the private sector. And the argument that had long been put forward was that there were not enough women who had the skills to fill these positions, or that women expressed little interest in these roles. It is clear that this argument does not hold, and that we have qualified and committed women to take on all these leadership roles in the region. So the major question is therefore to remove this barrier that exists at the level of individuals, communities, the laws, and the regulation. So our work to address these issues start internally as an organization. We are committed to increase the number of women in leadership positions in EngenderHealth officers. That's why for all the positions we publish, we don't just put women's applications are encouraged, but we ensure that a wide diffusion in the networks of women, feminist groups committed to work to women's rights, in the compendiums of women competencies, etc. And we also create an attractive work environment where there is no salary discrimination, and where women, especially mothers, can benefit from flexible working hours and conditions when it is necessary. And when partnering also with local organizations, with youth organizations, we ensure that women and girls are represented in the decision-making level.
Thank you so much, Mohamed. We can go for a quick round of very brief answers for one final question. So, Kent, what's the change that you've seen through the Global Health 50/50 initiative that you are most glad to see? And where is the biggest area for improvement?
Well, we have seen improvements. We've seen over the past 5 years, 25% increase around commitments to gender equality, and a similar increase in relation to workplace gender equality policies. So we have seen improvements. I think the biggest challenge really is getting organizations to walk the talk. I agree with Crystal. I think that it's not one thing, it's many things, but we probably need to start with policies. But I just want to end by saying inequity is not inevitable. Change is possible, as the organizations on this panel can attest to. So let's all make that change. Back to you, Renu.
Thank you, Kent. And I'll just quickly go to my other panelists for a quick piece of advice or tip on making organizations more diverse, equitable, and inclusive. Marina, what advice do you offer?
Yeah, so coming off of Kent's point, my advice is to be strategic. Change is not going to happen overnight. Be intentional and be tactical about where you want to see change, measure it over time, and stay the course.
Thank you. And Crystal?
I love that. I will add on ditto everything Marina said, but at the maybe the next piece of it is don't be discouraged if you don't get it right away. It takes time, and sometimes people will stop and say, well, it didn't work out, or people left, we don't see enough women retaining. That means you need to do a review of what's happening, because recruiting people is one piece of the puzzle. Having them stay is another piece of the puzzle that we need to focus on.
Thank you. Mohamed?
Yes, as they said, I totally agree that change takes time, but what I will say is that we need to learn from each other to make sure that we have a community of practice to make sure that we address this issue, because definitely we need to learn from each other.
Yeah, and I can end with one final tip from my side. So ditto to everything you all said, plus just start. We continuously find areas where we can improve, and the more we engage with our teams and partners, the more ideas we have about how we can improve. So thank you so much, Kent, Marina, Crystal, and Mohamed, for sharing your wonderful insights with all of us today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.